Combating discrimination means understanding just how complex the problem truly is. So Airbnb has partnered with leading civil rights groups and privacy experts to create entirely new processes to help determine when people's experiences differ based on how their race is perceived. By pinpointing when discrimination might be happening, we can work together to put a stop to it. This begins with using information people on Airbnb already share, like first names and profile photos, to help us understand the race someone else might see them as. It's important because understanding how someone is perceived can help prevent them from being discriminated against in the first place. We know it can feel scary when companies use your personal information, even for projects like fighting discrimination. So it's important you know how we protect it and how seriously we take your privacy. Before we use this information for this work, identifiable details are removed so that they will not be tied back to any account on Airbnb. We do all this because it's the right thing to do, and because a community that works together to be more inclusive benefits us all, no matter your background. We open more doors, create more human connections, and build more trust amongst every host and guest. Your support is essential to this journey. Protecting your information and making the platform better for everyone is how we all work towards a world where anyone can belong anywhere.
So there's this guy. Yeah, this guy. And this guy decides to make a better deck shoe. This better deck shoe. With a rubber sole that looked like waffles and stuck like syrup. And a custom upper made of whatever fabric you were feeling. And surfers dug that. So pretty soon these shoes started popping up all along the coastline, including a little surf shop in Santa Monica, where some hood rat kids had started surfing asphalt, carving banks, hijacking pools, and reinventing skateboarding in the process. So by the time they showed up to Del Mar in matching blue 44s, these shoes were as essential as the boards themselves. Then the guys were like, hey, can you make them like this? So we did, and this deck shoe became a deck shoe, which led to this shoe, which led to this shoe, which led to a stripe down the side, and kids sketching up the uppers. Pretty soon these shoes got to traveling, off the wall and into the ruckus, sticking to the floor and bouncing around pits before ending up in Hollywood, and blowing up in a movie the lawyers say we can't mention. Whatever, you know the one. From there, we took it international, while uniting kids from Sao Paulo to Shanghai under a checkerboard flag and bringing the underground to the main stage one show at a time. So weirdos everywhere knew they had squad too. But we never forgot our roots, shining a light on the things we loved from the North Shore to the French Alps and all the bowls, breaks, ramps, and parks in between. And when the times got dark and things got weird, we dropped Dogtown and Z-Boys, and the world took notice. Even hip-hop was like, where'd you get those? So we started running with the rap game and crushing runways from London to Milan, putting the high in fashion and tracking mud down that good carpet, the kind that sinks in when you're stepping. But we didn't stop there. We kept pushing, creating the House of Vans to give a nation of millions a place to come up, just like those that came before them. So while groupies line up to chase the next fad, we'll keep rocking our Vans, just like we have for the last 50 years, same as it ever was, only sometimes a little different. This is our story, and we're sticking to it, because we're the Van Dorn Rubber Company, but you can call us Vans.
When you're trying to solve a problem, sometimes the best thing to do is look at it through the eyes of a kid. Well, there's this nice kid, Logan, and he's really into cars. But not because they're fast, big, loud, and shoot flames. In Logan's world, cars were slow. I'm talking Betty White in ankle weights slow.
You know what? For the last half-century, we've built cities around cars. No one even thought about the economic, environmental, and social problems they were going to cause in the future.
So there's this other nice kid, John Z. No, not that kid. Yeah, this little dude. He's a real people person, always trying to bring people together. But he's thinking,
When we're shut off in our cars, we're shut off from each other. We weren't meant to live stuck on highways in zombie mode.
Yeah. What if we could create the next form of transportation? Something that can solve some of the big issues while connecting people on the way.
these kids got to work, researching all types of public transportation. Ferries, buses, trains, all kinds of trains. And while all these inventions held incredible promise, everything was stuck on a fixed route. So they started thinking, how might people create their own network with their own vehicles? The way combis work in Zimbabwe, a network of private cars for everyone that can go anywhere.
Maybe we could put the power of sharing rides directly into people's hands.
Drivers with spare seats should be able to share them, make extra money, get paid on their own terms.
One little tap should get passengers a friendly ride, door to door, and help reduce environmental impact.
And we'll give out giant pink mustaches for the front of every car.
Whoa, cowboy. I think you need to take care of some personal grooming. That's better. So in 2012, these two transportation-obsessed little freaks started LYFT, the very first peer-to-peer ride-sharing community. And right away, people started to join the revolution, sharing music, stories, dad jokes, hair tips, peaceful contemplation. Artists were driving to support their dreams. Students were using the app to get to school and to pay for school. We had sandwich makers and sushi chefs, lawyers and lesbians, astronauts and Democrats and Republicans, walk-of-shamers. Hey, good for you. A ride for every reason, for everyone. Their idea caught on as far as the eye could see, and cities began to reshape themselves for a new generation. Access to affordable rides made distances smaller. Car ownership became obsolete. Shared vehicles breezed through greener spaces faster than ever before. And honking became strictly reserved for saying hello. You know what? Kids do love cars. And in the not-so-distant future, there's going to be another couple crazy kids connecting in the back of a LYFT, thinking up the next big idea that changes the world. That would be pretty cool.
Once upon a time, there lived a little girl who hid her humble origins all her life and preferred to invent her own legend. Once upon a time, Gabrielle Chanel was born under the sign of the Leo to a traveling peddler and a laundress who died at 32, exhausted by life. Once upon a time, there was a father who abandoned his 5 children and had his 3 daughters sent away to an orphanage. At 12 years old, Gabrielle would never see him again. Forever after, she pretended that he had left to make his way in America. Once upon a time, there was an orphanage behind the walls of a convent, the Abbey of Aubazine, where Gabrielle spent nearly 7 years. The Romanesque purity of this ascetic world would inspire her sense of austerity and her taste for black and white, while the opulence of religious garments and ceremonial objects would spark her fascination with Baroque style, gold and colored gems in years to come. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful young girl who spent her days sewing and her nights singing in a cabaret before troops of cavalrymen. She was called Coco because she often sang, "Who's seen Coco in the Trocadero?" She always preferred to pretend that Coco was the nickname given to her by her father. Once upon a time, a young woman with a boyish allure refused to ride side-saddle on the horses of a well-born cavalier, Etienne Balzan. She dressed like no one else, taking her inspiration from masculine attire and inventing new styles of hat, which she stripped off their birds and feathers to make them simpler, lighter, more chic. Her first clients were working girls, but society quickly followed. Once upon a time, there was a great love named Boy Capel. English, wealthy, and cultivated, he was the man of her dreams. He introduced her to literature, the Orient, and the esoteric. Boy helped Coco become Chanel. She decided to open her first boutiques in Paris, Deauville, and Biarritz. She wanted to work to win her liberty. Once upon a time, a revolution came to pass when, in a stroke of genius, Coco Chanel transformed the female silhouette. She shortened dresses, revealed ankles, freed the waist, eliminated corsets, revived jersey, cut her hair, and bronzed her skin. Chanel closed one era and launched a new century of fashion. Once upon a time, at 31 Rue Cambon, Mademoiselle Chanel opened her first couture house in Paris in 1918. The little country girl, the orphan of Aubezine, had become the queen of Paris. Before liberating women, she had liberated herself. Once upon a time, there was a love story that ended abruptly. Boy Capel died in a car accident. For the first and last time, Coco Chanel was seen to cry. "Either I die as well," she said, "or I finish what we started together." She chose to go on.
This is the story of a man, a shoe, a pig, and a dog. This is the story of Hush Puppies, a dog's tale. Rockford, Michigan, USA, late 1950s. Wolverine Shoe and Tanning Corporation, no longer making pigskin gloves for the U.S. Navy, faces some troubling times. Looking to save the business, chairman of the board Victor Krause has an idea to use this pigskin to make shoes. But he was told that was impossible. With resistance from the board, Victor was still undaunted in his vision. So he rolls up his sleeves and goes from the boardroom down to the tannery. With nothing to lose and everything to gain, he became unleashed. Working hand in hand with the tannery boys, they invent the process for making shoes out of pigskin. Then he made a pair of shoes and wore them right back up to the boardroom. Right there, on his feet, he presents the future of the company. The board is still not quite convinced, but decided to give it a go and start testing with consumers. The results? Nothing short of fantastic. Meanwhile, in Kentucky, Wolverine's sales manager and a friend talk about what they should call these new shoes. He mentioned that in the South, hunters quiet their barking dogs with a treat they call hush puppies. He reasoned that when your feet hurt, they're much like barking dogs, and hush puppies make your feet feel good, quieting those barking dogs. Back in Rockford, a short list of 9 brand names were created. Hush Puppies is at the bottom, at number 8. At the top of the list, lasers. Yes, lasers. After much debate, Hush Puppies was chosen, and a brand was born. July 1958. Wolverine takes Hush Puppies to market, and sales skyrocket. Almost immediately, Hush Puppies became an iconic part of American casual style. The time was right, as America embraced a more casual lifestyle. Hush Puppies shoes were exactly what people were looking for. With great success at home, Victor decided to unleash Hush Puppies to the world, becoming a global sensation and a household name in just a few short years.
Was it the number 7 train that carried his barrels across the land? Or was 7 simply his lucky number? Some say there were 7 women in his life, but one held a special place in his heart. Truth is, only Jack Daniel knows the true meaning of old number 7, and we won't be hearing from him anytime soon.
What do we do at KPMG? We shape history. When President Roosevelt signed World War II's historic Lend-Lease agreement, he called on KPMG. France and most of Europe had fallen, and Britain was next. Winston Churchill turned to President Roosevelt, who signed the Lend-Lease Act, and Pete Marwick's senior partner William M. Black was tapped to execute this arsenal of democracy, which provided $60 billion in life-saving aid and arms to the Allies. What do we do at KPMG? We reunite families. When the Iranian hostage crisis left over 50 U.S. citizens in captivity for 444 days, the U.S. turned to KPMG Pete Marwick at a critical stage in the final resolution. $24 billion in conflicting claims had to be sorted, to the satisfaction of bitterly divided sides. KPMG assured that satisfaction and the hostages came home. What do we do at KPMG? We champion democracy. When a historic election needed the trust of a nation, KPMG South Africa was there. With unclear results, the election threatened civil unrest. The KPMG team worked round the clock to certify the election, ensuring fairness and accuracy. Nelson Mandela became president, and South Africa became a young democracy. We're all here for a purpose. Inspire confidence, empower change.
Once that perfect cup of Starbucks coffee arrives, you might not give much thought about what it took to get there. But rest assured, we have. Before you receive that rich, smooth, roasty, balanced coffee, it was made personally for you by our barista, the one who greeted you warmly and remembered your name is Emily, and that you like the double tall, non-fat cappuccino. Now, before we could make your favorite beverage, our signature espresso roast traveled the ocean from one of our artisan roasters. The way we roast beans is uniquely Starbucks because we roast until the second pop, which maximizes the flavor of each and every bean. Long before our roasters can roast those Arabica beans, our buyers have to source them. They travel across 3 growing regions to carefully pick the best Arabica beans in the world. And since we're so close, let's go back to the people who started it all, the coffee growers. We work closely with farmers, like Alfredo here, who share our passion about creating the finest coffee in the world, which means the personal care your coffee receives in that first 10 feet of its journey is the same as in those last 10 feet. And that's the end of, well, the beginning of how Starbucks creates rich, smooth, roasty, balanced, and personal coffee perfection. Discover your perfect Starbucks coffee today.
This is a true story, and like all true stories, it's about a salesman, taxidermy, and heavy drinking. A lot's going on in 1955. In Milwaukee, the National League wins the 22nd All-Star Game. In Jacksonville, riots break out over a singer named Elvis. And in New York City, traveling salesman Abbott Peterson's flight is delayed. Abbott did what anyone would do when their flight was delayed in 1955. Abbott came upon a taxidermy shop, and that's when he met Pete. And while it was Abbott who probably knocked Pete's head off, it was the flight attendant who used his tie to reattach it and suggested,
"He's cute. I bet he'd look good on his shirt."
Next thing you know, Arnold Palmer's wearing it golfing. Earl the Pearl Anthony was wearing it bowling. He was wearing it. These guys were wearing it. Even this guy. Back then, penguin clothing was synonymous with American leisure sports. Today, it's simply an American icon. Where does a good idea come from anyway? From genius, or hard work, or luck? Or maybe from this guy, a stuffed penguin, and a few of these? And while this probably doesn't happen every time, it did that time.